This is Chapter 3, Section 4, Part 2, Conditional Statements as Disjunctions. And it reads, this is from page 131, statements containing connectives other than and or may have equivalent statements. To illustrate this point, construct truth tables for P conditional Q and for negated P and Q. Or Q. The truth tables will have the same answer column, and therefore the statements are equivalent. We summarize this as follows. A conditional statement written as a disjunction, where we have P conditional Q biconditional negated P or Q. If you look at example 7, it says rewriting a disjunction as a conditional statement. So to write a conditional statement that is logically equivalent to the cows are in the pasture or the horses are not in the barn. So P becomes the cows are in the pasture. Q becomes the horses are in the barn. Okay, the original statement may be written symbolically as P or negated Q. Because remember, it says, the original statement says the horses are not in the barn, so we negate it. To write an equivalent conditional statement, negate the first statement, P, replace the disjunction symbol V with a conditional symbol, and keep the second statement the same. Symbolically, the equivalent statement would be negated P, or the cows are not in the pasture, conditional, the horses are not in the barn. The equivalent statement in words is, if the cows are not in the pasture, then the horses are not in the barn. If we come over here, make sure you understand that this is another one, the negation of a conditional statement written as a conjunction, where we have negated parentheses biconditional Q, P conditional Q, biconditional P and negated Q. Variations of the conditional statements. And this reads straight from the book on page 132. We know that P conditional Q is equivalent to negated P or Q. Are any other statements equivalent? Okay, and as P conditional Q, yes, there are many. It says, now let's look at the variations of the conditional statement to determine whether any are equivalent to the conditional statement. The variations of the conditional statement are made by switching and or, negating the antidote and the consequent of antecedent of the conditional statement. The variations of the conditional statement are the converse of the conditional, the inverse of the conditional, and the contrapositive of the conditional. So we look here, this is what it's saying. It says variations of conditional statements. So in terms of this, we name the conditional statement P conditional Q. If P, then Q. It says the converse of the conditional statement would be switching them. So we put Q in the front, P in the back, and so it says if Q, then P. The inverse of the conditional statement, where we negate both from the original conditional statement. Negated P, conditional, negated Q. If not P, then not Q. And then the other one is the contrapositive. Contrapositive is taking the inverse and switching them. So we put negated Q in the front, negated P in the back. So it says if not Q, then not P. So you've got to understand these rules in terms of being able to work the problems. So in example 10 here, it says the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. It says for the conditional statement, if the painting is by Andy Warhol, then the painting is valuable. Write the converse, okay? So the converse would be where we switch the P and the Q. So if my P is the painting is by Andy Warhol and the Q is the painting is valuable, then it would be if the painting is valuable, then the painting is by Andy Warhol. If we want the inverse, then we have to negate P and Q. So it would be if the painting is not by Andy Warhol, then the painting is not valuable. And then the last one is where we switch the inverse to make the contrapositive. So it would be if the painting is not valuable, then the painting is not by Andy Warhol. If we look at example 12, it says use of the contrapositive. Okay, so remember the contrapositive is negating P and Q and then switching them. So it's negated Q, conditional negated P. If negated Q, then negated P. It says use the contrapositive to write a statement logically equivalent to if you don't eat your meat, then you can't have any pudding. Okay, so P is if you don't eat your meat. Q is you can have any pudding, because remember this is P conditional negated Q. So Q would be if you can. The given statement written symbolically is negated P, if negated P, then negated Q. The contrapositive would be, because these are already negated, we'd have to make them unnegated. So it'd be P, if P, then Q, then we'd have to switch them. So it'd be if Q, then P, which would be if you can have any pudding, then you do eat your meal, your meat.